do my one take chipper welcome.
We are recording.
All right. Welcome everybody to tonight's City of Tumwater Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, May 12th, 2026 at 7 p.m. And our meeting is called to order. We'll start with roll call. Commissioner Edwards is excused. Is Commissioner Kotek? Commissioner Kotek?
Oh, she declined being promoted to panelist. Commissioner Kotek, do you mind if I,
Allow her to talk for now.
Commissioner Kotek, can you hear us?
Commissioner Kirkpatrick?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson? Here. Mr. Rounsley?
Here.
Vice Chair Staff?
Here.
And me, your chair, Commissioner Robbins. And going back to Commissioner Kotek, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. I'm going to mark you here. So, all
I'm
right.
here.
Very good. We have a quorum, so we're ready to go. Let's see. Were there any changes to our agenda that people want to bring up? None. Let's go to approval of our minutes from April 14th this year. Comments, revisions?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 4/14/26. Second.
Great. It's been moved and seconded to approve our meeting minutes from April 14th of 2026. Last call for discussion. All right. All in favor of approving our minutes from April 14th, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Everybody. Commissioner reports. Anybody want to bring up anything? Doing and seeing, learning about? Yep. Let's go to our deputy director.
Do not have any updates.
Okay. Let's do our public comments then. Is there anyone online who would like to make general remarks to the Planning Commission? And if so, tell if
There isn't anyone. Still two participants asking.
nobody in the room. So, okay, we'll move on from there. Let's move on to item 8. Big clip here. Our 2026 comprehensive plan.
Hi, friends. My name is Jay Angel. I'm the Economic Development Coordinator here for the City of Tumwater. It's been just about 8 months now since I've started, and it's been truly a professional privilege for me to work on the Economic Development Comprehensive Plan update. Look, it's a big document, right? And the policy tables alone are significant. It's a weighty thing. So we're not able to go through every single element inside the policy table draft, but I wanted, and Kelly and I worked really hard on this, to give an overview of the direction that we're going, to introduce the draft policy table to you, and really just to make sure, are we on the right track? We have significant blind spots, and just get the feedback that we need as staff to make sure that we're doing the work that we need to be doing as staff. Just as a reminder, your economic development team, Kelly Adams, Assistant City Administrator, she is there. That's me, I'm here. And you're always welcome to contact us and email us. Anytime you have questions about economic development priorities, anytime you have unclarities, we are available here for you to speak. Okay, so there's a significant number of changes that we put in this policy table draft compared to the policy tables that were in the previous economic development element. And the first thing that I want to say that I didn't write on there is that we wanted to make sure that our policy tables were not a wish list of items, that every possible idea was included regardless of whether or not there was city or staff capacity to actually implement them. We wanted to create an operational strategy that any staff member, if Kelly is no longer here or I am no longer here, could pick this strategy up, see clearly, here's an operating guideline, and move that forward. So that was a big intention for us. We wanted to implement the use of data and outreach as a unifying strategy, not just sort of piecemeal engagement here and there as part of different initiatives, but something that was structurally incorporated inside of the strategy. Wanted to make sure that this document is readable. A lot of city documents are just, they're difficult, right? They're tough to penetrate. So we wanted to make sure we're using plain language materials, because in a way that maybe some other planning documents aren't, the economic development element really is meant to be a public-facing document for developers, for community members, for regular businesses to understand what the city is doing. We wanted to also make sure that we built in standards for the way that we actually recruit businesses into our community. Now, if there's an open property, that's a free market decision. Anybody can choose to move into that property as long as it's a conforming use, right? But when we use staff time to actually go for recruitment projects, we want to make sure that we have standards around how we're using staff time to make sure we're recruiting businesses that are in alignment with our priorities. And then we also added an additional standalone goal for a placemaking strategy, an airport strategy, and a brewery complex strategy. Now, these things were sort of in the previous plan, but they were underneath under other elements, kind of tucked away and hidden. We wanted to bring those things out and make them standalone goals and policies. Okay. We're just going to go through each of the high-level goals. There's 9 of them. I'll give sort of a brief overview of what each goal is really meant to accomplish, and then some teaser questions, right, to get you thinking and to get feedback from you in the spaces that we could really use that. So goal 1, establish a predictable, responsive, and investment-ready development climate that stimulates economic activity and desirable private investment. This one is really a holdover goal from the previous plan, but what we did is we wanted to consolidate a lot of those elements, present them in a slightly different way, and sort of simplify them, make them plain language. And the thing that's sort of important about this goal, the one thing that I would make sure that everybody understands is that it solidifies and makes the development review process a core economic development priority. And that's really for 2 reasons. One, I was just reading some research that came out of the Financial Times, and it said that the #1 reason why a business would invest capital in a community is actually the reputation of that community. It wasn't the demographics, it wasn't the growth. The #1 reason was simply the reputation that the community had. That attracts investment, it attracts capital. We just came back from a conference in Vancouver, BC, that was a placemaking conference. And one of the things that we learned was that perception, just kind of another word for reputation, right, was a primary consideration for the attraction of capital, labor, and tourism. And not only was it a primary, it was the biggest part of all of them, right? So we want to make sure that we have a community that has a reputation for generating the kind of economic development activities that are important to being able to attract that kind of capital. But I want to ask a question that is more focused on style and presentation. Is a movement towards a more publicly readable format for a document like this a desirable way for us to go? Is writing it in plain language, is consolidating these types of policies something that we should be aspiring to, or did we already have it right before? I'm curious to hear your feedback. And I kind of have this set up to where each goal will we can have a back and forth. So I'm curious to hear what the commission thinks.
I'll start, and I would always say plain language is better than not. Be clear with what we're trying to say to people. And I don't mean, dumb it down or anything, but just, let's make ourselves understood. One thing, though, that I would kind of like to know, and that I hope that the plan would maybe be obvious about, is how would that potential capital investor use the plan? Or maybe another way to say it, how would they understand our reputation from the plan? Or you can probably think of other little ways of thinking about that. If that's what we're trying to communicate, that we're welcoming, that we have the place for them, that we are ready to help them establish or grow a business, how are they going to use that? How are they going to see that in the plan? I don't mean that you have to answer that right now. Maybe it's more, but that's the kind of thing that I think you're getting at. So that would be my answer.
Thank you for that. That's certainly at the top of my mind too.
I think it's important because, like, planning language, so textual, but like all of the language supporting that doesn't to be, and finding that happy balance of if something wants to come in and build, yes, they have to hire consultants because that's just the way the world works, but it shouldn't be that difficult to figure out whether or not it's even worth it to start the project.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement, having the clearest language. I read these documents, but I don't enjoy in my free time to go and read very in-depth, detailed documents. I usually go to an appendix, or I go to a quick how-to, or nowadays you have the AI generated, here's the gist of it. I think that is the way things are kind of shifting, is here's the gist, here's how you can get the flavor, and then you go and you can read that.
Thank you.
I think it's first Commissioner Nelson and then Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
One of the questions I had as I read through this, and I found the beginning of it kind of repetitive. So I thought, well, and I think it's because there is so this is just structural. There's a goal, there's a strategy, and then there's sub-strategies. And I think that's fine as a work plan for staff, but something that's public, that's on the website, I think when you talk about understandable and simple, I don't think we should go below the main strategy level. And I didn't know what it was before, so I have no basis of it.
And maybe Dana
Yeah,
can correct me if I'm wrong,
sure.
but my understanding is that these policy tables will be a part of an appendix that is included inside of the actual comprehensive plan update, and that within the actual plan, we can narrativize it in a way that will be more accessible to the average person or to any person, while still having this level of detail available for the people that are
developers.
For the people that are interested in it. Exactly.
And perhaps it goes, it's valuable to reiterate or go back to the comprehensive plan and how the rest of the comprehensive plan is structured. If you remember, we had part 1 and part 2, and part 1 was the goals and policies, and part 2 was the contextual information, or the technical part. So then that part 1 would be, you mentioned the goals and policies, but then the implementation actions, or the strategies as they're called there, are really, so number 1, they do guide those staff actions. And we do want to put them at the level of a comprehensive plan, although it gets to be a lot reading through. And so moving those into the appendix of part 1 allows people to look through and see what are the larger overarching goals and policies, yet those actions are still part of the plan and very much what we're using to move forward, and also our draft implementation actions, so that the council has an option, over the next 10 years before we update the plan again. There may be shifts and changes in our community that those we don't want to be stuck because they are quite specific. And so because they're in the appendix and labeled as draft, then we can bring that to council, and council can shift and change those and decide that, this needs to be a little different without updating the comp plan again. Yes, please.
The policy table, you're absolutely right. For Jean and I, it helps us with our work planning during the year. But an additional benefit of the policy tables is, as our regional partners, as we work together to try to do placemaking and try to increase tourism, try to attract businesses, it helps us to demonstrate to regional partners that we have been intentional about saying, this is what we want to do, and we have council support. And when Jean talks about that placemaking, part of it, a big thing that site developers are looking for, people who are site searching, is, does your council support this effort? Because if you don't have council support and unity, it can drive businesses away.
Well, I read into this goal and the rest of the goals that we're looking at more than just in a light industrial facility. Got to bring water. We've got to have an infrastructure that will attract economic development. Economic development doesn't end with the retail function itself. Includes things like housing. Demonstrate that we're going to be support the population that's necessary for them to hire from to operate. It becomes a much bigger piece, and I read that into these goals, but it never really specifically talks with, and maybe that's good. Maybe we want to know, that's just in the back of the mind. People that want to invest want to know that information. Some way the plan has got to point to other portions of the comprehensive housing section. Say that, this is an island. This is part of the overall.
I'd like to kind of amplify that, if I may, or paraphrase, because I do think that's terribly important. It's really an ecosystem. They're going to
the word up there is climate. That's the one that I grabbed.
Exactly. So, but it's going to be all these interconnecting pieces that create that reputation or the place that we're trying to make here, and to let them know that those pieces are not disjointed, that they're working together, they are in place, ready for that. So I think that's a really make sure I'm hearing from everybody else. Commissioner Rousley, did you have?
No, what I already got is really how I'm feeling about this one. I think at the surface level, the strategies are incredible as long as we have a work plan with them. I think, not to get on a soapbox of the comprehensive plan, but sometimes the comprehensive plan has so many goals, elements, strategies, thoughts, but there's not enough money, time, and staff time to actually implement them. So as long as we're also kind of aligning in what is priority in it as well, I think is important.
Nico, Commissioner Kotek, I don't want to leave you out. Did you have any remarks on this one?
Muted and muted.
Commissioner Kotek? All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can.
Oh, okay. I agree with what Commissioner Staff said about being able to just get in there and get the information and dive into the important parts. I think that a majority of people, I mean, not all, but enjoy getting information that way, and I think that's kind of the way we're going nowadays. So I like the way it's set up.
Great, thank you. Okay. You want to move on?
Okay, goal number 2, retain, grow, and support Tumwater's existing businesses and entrepreneurs. Really, this is a goal that is meant to clarify and expand the city's strategy, formalize our business retention and expansion framework with our partners like the Economic Development Council, the Tumwater Chamber of Commerce, the Thurston Chamber of Commerce. They really are our primary economic development partners. We want to make sure that we're using them in a way that benefits the city of Tumwater, but also I wanted to make sure as we went through this process and speaking with Kelly about this, that we had the right communication feedback loops and the right outcome measurements for actually contracting with our partners, right? So we want to make sure that we're measuring the things that we care about. We do get reports back, but it's unclear, are those reports measuring the things that are necessarily priorities for the city of Tumwater? And it makes sure that we're also linking our workforce partners specifically to the employer needs. So again, sort of as we're going through the process of a workforce development strategy, we're also connecting that part of the strategy to our economic development partners in the EDC, in the chamber. So how do we leverage and use those economic development partners? That's really the meat and potatoes of goal number 2. And my question for you is, when we think about the outcomes that we want reported back to us, what do we care about? What do we value? Is it the number of jobs created? Is it the number of jobs above a certain wage created? Is it businesses recruited? Is it businesses recruited in a certain kind of sector, right? Those are the kinds of things that we need to grapple with as we're talking to our economic development partners, and not just saying, okay, go, but okay, go do what, right? I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
I think recruited and retained is a critical piece. I look at the craft district and how many businesses have already moved from the craft district, and asking them, why did you close shop? Was it too expensive? Did you not have enough traffic? What happened? We just lost another business.
Over the weekend.
Yeah. So I told a friend, hey, here's a place you can put your winery. That's a big thing, that I don't want Tumwater to become this stepping stone or this place where people are ran out of because we're too expensive or different things like that. When I lived in Florida, they have strip malls everywhere, and they're vacant. They build them, they fill them up, then people move on, and they forget about it. I don't want Tumwater to become that. So that's something critical for me.
On that same thought, I'm curious what kind of partnerships the city has with, like, the craft district, or why can't I think of Happy Teriyaki, that strip mall? Like, what kind of partnerships do we have with those individual owners of those areas to kind of alleviate some of that retention issue, or to help drive certain businesses into those areas, knowing that it's private and they can do whatever they want?
So I want to lift up Gene. So since he started with the city, he worked on a business outreach program that the mayor says folks, they have signed off on. And what it does is he's able, as soon as we hear about something, we go and do an exit interview. We go and collect as much qualitative data that we can. And so we have gotten some very useful information. But it's that refined data that we can't afford the massive systems that are used to collect the data that we really need to tell the story. So we are collecting the qualitative data, just the big picture of quantitative data that we really need to figure out what's useful. And especially for entrepreneurs, how are we helping folks who want to start their own small businesses, and especially as we move into what is possibly a recession, Mm-hmm. How do we help folks in Tumwater to succeed in a challenging economy?
Are you guys able to analyze that qualitative data and get the themes of it? And
I think over time,
not quite yet,
not quite yet. Okay.
because I think that will be really important. And it's those themes that you're going to be able to think through and say, okay, this is how we could help retention, and this is how we could help recruitment. Because my answer here was ask them. Don't ask me, ask them. They're going to be the ones that can tell you the best. And then I wrote down, what are the barriers that contribute to businesses leaving? Why are we having this turnover?
And the reason I ask that is because I'm in the community in Olympia, and I was at the Craft District as one of the sole tenants for multiple years as Director of Heritage. And so I get it. I was on the ground as these businesses were coming in, and I heard a lot of the frustrations as they were coming in. So that's why I think it is very important to keep close to the business. And one other interesting thing is you have workforce partners up there, Pack Mountain and all these other great entities. I work closely with them, and they have frustrations with employers because employers don't listen, or they can't get the time of day to even talk to them about all the great programs that they do have. So I would encourage the city to keep driving that because there's either free to the business or deeply discounted pieces for the businesses for workforce development, which I'm very passionate about.
And really, one of the overall, after I looked through this, I thought, what is the capacity in the department? Is it just two of you for collecting and analyzing data? And do you know where to go to get some of this data that is embedded in sections of this? And there are, there's consulting firms that can do that for you. Matter that you don't want to pay an arm and a leg to those consulting firms to be able to set up a system for you.
Dean, would you mind sharing what your previous role was?
Sure, yeah. So for 10 years, I was the Director of Research and Evaluation at Thurston Economic Development Council. So my world is...
All right.
All right.
But you're right? And I think that's where really what I'm trying to tease out of some of this conversation is the nature and the way that we use our partners.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right, we don't have the capacity to do every type of analysis here ourselves. But we want to make sure that we're using our partners smartly, and the Thurston Economic Development Council does have that capacity.
Exactly.
They have made that investment. So we want to make sure that we're using them to the fullest extent that we are able to, not just in reporting their own activities, but we want to make sure that we're collecting that information and presenting that in a way that is understandable, but also leveraging the data capacity that they have.
Well, I was excited to see it. I was just sharing with Brad tonight that where I come from, when you write a goal, it's a measurable goal. And you're going to achieve X, and it's going to be this percentage, and it will report it on these dates. And I said, I'm not seeing this in all of this work here that I look at. I said, is that because that's just kind of not the standard for government? And his response was, well, there's very little that they can control that's happening externally. But I still think, and I understand you don't want to have the goal is by 2035, the retention rate, of course, you'd have to know what your base is, of businesses is X percentage or something, or that the net gain in businesses is such and such a number. That's what I would want to see. Whether that's feasible or not, you've got the resources to do that is something else. But I see the desire in here. So I want to compliment you on that.
If I could add to that, I think we also have to kind of analyze what you hinted at it, but analyze what the city has control over and what they don't.
Exactly.
Like, we can't control if at the end of the day rent is too expensive. Like, we just don't have any authority over that. But we do have the ability to maintain certain costs for those tenants, sewer, utilities, all of that. And at the same time, have the ability to kind of look at some of our internal ordinances for planning, for development, for signage, like some of those things, I feel like we have more of an influence of how can we help retain and grow, less than like controlling if they actually leave.
Yeah, I think we also have, these are the goals and policies that set the 20-year time horizon. And then we have a separate section right under there about call them illustrative actions. Or
Implementation action.
implementation actions that are illustrative, because we don't know what the council is going to set as direction, and that can change. But the goals and policies should be kind of that broad 20-year, whereas the actions are going to be that, what are we going to do? How are we going to?
Well, and I think some of those actions obviously have timelines to them and expectations and numbers and data.
Ingrained in the goals are what? It's the how that's hard to express and hard to accomplish without boldness or some help there. Think of Falls Terrace, closed now for 5 years. What are we doing to talk to the owner and encourage them to stay here? Do we even know whether they want to stay here? I mean, is there a process out there where we actually identify who our existing businesses are, think about whether they're thinking about leaving, and then do something to influence that? I mean, there's a 5-year process with Falls Terrace, and I drive by every day. It hasn't changed.
So Gina's on it, so that's part of our business outreach. And I think something that is a bit challenging about Tumwater, and it's part of the great puzzle, is for the data piece, we're developing the baseline. That's going to take some time. So we're trying to find that baseline to compare against, so that in 20 years, if it's not us, someone else is enjoying the shade of this data tree. But we also have the Brownfield redevelopment program, and that's been a big part of our work, and focusing on the brewery and focusing on brownfields. And so creating maps of brownfields, and now we're starting to add another layer, which is vacant businesses, or businesses that we suspect may be struggling. But this is, again, qualitative data. And so with Jean's background and being cognizant that we're using taxpayer funding to do any consulting or research, we're trying to get to the right, thoughtful, intentional place of what we want to use a consultant for. And as far as Falls Terrace, that is one that we are actively reaching out to try to offer support and see how the city can help.
There was an article in the Olympian, somebody interviewed the owner just recently meaning within the last couple months.
They started refurbishing it and then ran into things.
Yeah.
Or is there somebody that would like to go and pick it up and take it over?
Right.
I've talked to people that would love to do that. So, and this ties into the brewery district, which is an exciting piece, but also won't happen until we have the East Street connection and all these other moving pieces, which would be great, because I love shopping in Tumwater. I love eating in Tumwater, but we don't have the things that me and my family want to go to. We've exhausted our resources here. I want to go get some really good dumplings. I can't do that here. I have to go over and get some mediocre ones in Lacey. Or if I go up to Seattle, I can get really good ones. So it's like, how do we keep driving these businesses and these things? And the brewery district, the craft district's a good start, but how do we keep retaining people here? Is my biggest thing. I mean, I'll be here for the next 20 years, hopefully. And I want to be able to see that shade tree and say, hey, we talked about this and this is where we're at now. And we have these really great places that people are wanting to go to Tumwater instead of wanting to go to Lacey or Olympia to eat.
Speak to that very briefly. I don't want to get off topic, but this summer we should have all of the phase 2 environmental assessment work done, not only on the warehouse, the valley floor, but also the properties that the city bought surrounding the warehouse, so that we will have certainty and developers will know what the cost is of cleanup.
That's good.
And then we can move forward and try to find maybe some cleanup funding if that's available from EPA.
Yeah.
So this is our bread and butter every day. is
Yeah.
Pushing and moving and making progress.
Good.
And Jean has done an incredible job of federal legislative outreach to get money to take down the boiler house, which is something that is within our control. We can demolish that and get rid of the contamination. So we've, with Jean's work, we have a commitment from Marilyn Strickland's office to be in the top 10 of her requests, and so we're just waiting to hear back. And so I think it's by the fall is when we find out if we've
That's good
been
news.
approved. Yeah.
That's very good news.
Wish we could hear from you guys more often, quite frankly.
That's
We
actually,
can visit you all the time.
that's true.
I mean, it's really helpful to know all of these actions that are being taken just as a citizen living here in
Right.
Tumwater.
Maybe we should have a regular update from the economic development team.
Yeah.
I just want to, it sounds like you're really onto it, and I don't want to shortchange the qualitative data. That's fabulous. That's it, and especially if that's primarily what you got, that's good. But it sounds like part of what that represents is the relationships that the city is creating with individual businesses, the associations, the chambers, and those are all going to help. You're going to tap into what maybe the commercial lenders know, or the businesses are going to say, you know what, we could use help with marketing, or whatever the thing is, right? So that's going to be really important. And the basic numbers of people and salaries is one thing, but some of those qualitative things are really going to help, I think, really steer the ship. So especially as you get more and more of those people talking to you.
Well, and I want to plug for Jean real quick. You came up in a board meeting just about 2 hours ago because of the thing you went to in Vancouver, the people, place, and all of that. From the greater economic development community, you had a great connection for the city of Tumwater, so I appreciate that. That was brought up with Experience Olympia and beyond, because we're tourism driven, and going to things like that are so critical. And the group doesn't know how incredible this place is, that and how lucky we were that it was in Vancouver, because this is a worldwide destination organization where people fly in and visit and have this few day, very intensive conversation on what makes communities communities. So I'm very glad that you went and represented the city. I don't know if anybody else went, but I just want to thank you for going. So thank you. Yeah.
Good. I don't want to leave anybody out. Commissioner Kotek, did you have anything you want to contribute on this one?
I don't. I like the conversation, and I think keeping the current families, and Kelly and I've talked a lot about this, keeping the current families that have been in Tumwater for years and years with their businesses in businesses. That's important to me, making sure that we're making sure they stay in Tumwater and our community, we're taking care of them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Goal number 3, grow and diversify Tumwater's traded sector economy with a focus on industrial and light manufacturing. So I want to just quickly point out traded sector. Sometimes this is an uncommon term, right? And it really means any industry sector that is exchanged with other markets other than domestic markets. So we're not talking about doctors and restaurants. We're talking about IT services or widget manufacturers, right? Anything that can be exported to another community and import wealth from those communities to our community. That's the idea. And a couple of things that I want to point out is that inside the policy tables, we're trying to acknowledge that industrial land is scarce. Don't have that much of it, and it generates a lot of revenue for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that we're highlighting it as an economic asset, because it enables us to fund a lot of the initiatives and a lot of the values that we have here in the city of Tumwater. And to that extent, we want to make sure that if we're going to make infrastructure investments, that it's going to be in alignment with what industrial sites need. I'll point out just very quickly that the Tumwater Brewery site, the warehouse site, that's the last industrial land with rail access that we have here, right? And if we want to reactivate that as an industrial space, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily the right thing to do, but if we want to do that, we have to either make sure that we're using that rail or figure out how in the world we're going to get trucks along that street to the I-5 corridor, right? That's a problem, right? So we want to make sure that the infrastructure is in alignment with the actual goals that we have in terms of industrial policy. And we want to do this not only for revenue generation's sake, make sure that we are programmatically well-funded, but also because the city of Tumwater is very dependent on public administration for employment. And it is sort of both a strength and a weakness because it's a risk, right? It provides a really great employment floor, but it's a lever that we don't control. Right? If the state makes a different decision, we don't have control of that. That can have really catastrophic consequences for our community. So it's a risk mitigation strategy too. Import wealth from other communities, make things here in Tumwater, sell them out there, bring their money here. Okay. The questions I have. Is that even the right way to think about it? Do we value our industrial lands in that way? Want to have that kind of emphasis on industrial lands? Not advocating for the zoning of additional industrial lands, but we want to make sure that we're treating the industrial land that we have now as a scarce finite resource to be protected. And then inside of this policy tables, you're going to note that there's a little bit of language around the development of green manufacturing. But what in the world is green manufacturing? What does it mean? What does a green business mean? To some extent, every manufacturer pollutes in some degree. They could make a product that has a net benefit. But how do we grapple with that? How do we think about it? I'm curious what a green business actually means to you and how we should interpret that as staff.
To your first question, that maybe it's a little bit on the green side too, is I would want us to think about, and I'm sure you probably have, kind of the comparison between, and here I'm particularly thinking of the infrastructure piece. What an investment to get whatever infrastructure up to operation suitably compared to expected revenue that property's gonna generate, you know, over whatever period of time. Hopefully, you know, if you got to fixed up the rail line down there and it was operational and that was maybe that'd be a good solid 20-year investment. And so you'd look at it compared to the 20 years of revenue. So there's comparable, or whatever you need to do. But, you know, so that's going to help tell you something. And then you can add on layers to that sort of comparison analysis with the green side of things. Is that cost going to be offset by some other benefits to the community? You know, we're sequestering carbon, or we're conserving something. You know, are there other benefits that we could say that we get on the revenue side? It's not cold hard cash, but it's some other benefit to the community, some other public benefit that can somehow be calculated. So that might be a way for us to help think about and compare. Is it too costly for us? Probably the biggest question of all, maybe. Or is that, okay, we can maybe undertake that. It might be a big lift, but we can undertake it because it's going to be so important, or we expect this to be a significant public benefit for us. We so desire this public benefit that it's worth whatever that cost is going to be. So, you know, there's a way to judge that for me.
How do we layer in the industrial and the residential kind of components together? So where my mind goes is one of our number one assets in Washington State is aerospace Boeing. And there are thousands upon thousands of small manufacturers of parts in Portland, in Tacoma, north of us, and every place else, but not here. And I kind of ask myself, why is that? Also, with industry like that, you are not doing a lot of polluting, unless you're anodizing, you're doing some of the secondary, tertiary processes. But if you're doing that primary piece, you can run it up I-5, and there is a tremendous boon for the city that's doing that. So I want to ask, why do we not have that here? But also, you can have a brewery right next to a CNC shop. You can have other industry right next to it, so it doesn't disrupt the entire space, where if you put in something that is going to be so loud or pumping coal into the sky, I mean, all of those pollutive aspects, you can't have a place for you to go and play with your kids right next door necessarily. So that's what I would love to see, is how do we focus, and can, at the city level, we focus in on those smaller manufactured pieces that could use rail, could use trucks, could use all of that, but really focus on the businesses that we have in the state even.
I think my initial thought goes to, how are we looking at mixed use more than how are we looking at all of these segments separately? One odd example that comes to my brain is the Toyota dealership having a restaurant inside of it. But that is developing a relationship with multiple businesses within inside one that are benefiting the community. And we're building so many apartments right now, but the entire building is apartments, instead of looking at how are we incentivizing mixed use, and why is the bottom of those not storefronts?
Right.
That is how you do placemaking, is you provide a place for those individuals to shop, to live. But right now, we're just building apartments for you to then drive to Olympia.
And that is part of what we have discussed recently, is having that, where you have business on the bottom, apartments on the top. And that's where, kind of my example is, if we have something, we want to be able to have residential right there as well. Because having just one thing and having nothing else around it creates a dead zone.
Right.
And it's really awkward when my past life, when, yes, I worked at Boeing, so that's why I use that as an example. I would drive to a zone and there were no restaurants, there was absolutely nothing around, but you had probably thousands of people working in this industrial area. I don't want to see Tumwater become.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
Touched on it in the beginning, but if I learned anything from the amount of time that we spent on the comprehensive plan, is that geographically Tumwater does not have a plan. If we even come close to the increase in population that we have agreed is corrected, put in our comp plan, I'm not sure if I agree with that, we're going to have to give up most of our industrial area to housing. And the only alternative to that is to expand the city limits of Tumwater. So we have other places to put industrial and housing areas. Right now, if you go down inch by inch of what we got, you take out the land that we want to keep as open space so that we'd have the community we've grown used to, take away all the land that has a high water table and is not really developable. We've got things there now that shouldn't be there. We don't have room to do what you're optimistically looking at here. We're going to fill up few pieces of light industrial land with non-light industrial items, quite possibly a bedroom community for Olympia and Lacey. And there's not going to be any room for those industrial things.
But our current,
Unless we grow.
our current zoning doesn't allow residential uses in light industrial. Can't just housing into the light industrial, protected by the zoning codes.
I know that we had a little bit of upset with the apartments that were built next to Toyota. That land that we hope would in some way be developed as commercial land rather than a apartment building.
I think the land you're talking about was rezoned to mixed use. So mixed use does allow economic and commercial and housing.
Mixed use has been a great idea, planning, for 30 years, but of little interest to developers. Where we're sitting right now, I can remember spending hundreds of hours planning the development of this particular area. Almost all of it mixed use, complicated by the fact that it was, part of it was airport property and everything else. But the idea was to put people and retail together here. Go out and walk around this area and see how much of that has happened. That was, published as a plan 20 years ago.
I wonder if sometimes those things may take a little while to ultimately develop or, kind of grow into their full vision of what they set out to be. I mean, not everything is going to be changing through time, no matter what it is. But for some of those kinds of things, because we don't control all the commercial ventures that are out there, the retail or whatever, it will take some time for that stuff to settle into place. So it's not going to be instantaneous. And I granted that 20 years, if that's what it was plenty long enough. You might expect to have seen some of that kind of thing, but still, I mean, it could take a while. I was just up in Woodinville over the weekend, and we were in this one kind of, where right around the City Hall area is ton of developments, mixed use, retail type stuff, big winery kind of thing up there. So they kind of have a central, I guess that's their big deal up there anyway, sort of the trade sector kind of thing, but also the retail. And then tons of housing, 3, 4, maybe even 5-story housing up there. So we have some vertical space here, as long as we don't have an earthquake, for housing. So we should still be, it seems to me we should still be pretty good, because one of the other things that our comp plan says is that we have sufficient land for the anticipated housing needs, right? I know, because I kept asking you about that. And so, I don't know if it presumes that we just keep going up and up and up, but we're supposed to have plenty of land, and it shouldn't encroach on the industrial, so far as I'm aware.
Right, and I think a lot of the conversation around this was when we discussed the land use element.
Yeah.
And so within the land use element, one of the big data pieces there is Thurston Regional Planning Council did a study that's called the buildable lands analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that buildable lands analysis, we got the allotments of what we're supposed to build,
Right.
And the housing units we're supposed to plan for.
Right.
And so I think those are, the conversations you're remembering. And that land analysis did determine that we had just a margin of enough land, but in order to give a little bit more, to make sure we had a little bit of cushion, because we can't control all the factors, and that we don't know exactly which pieces may have other encroaching factors, maybe like a wetland is not necessarily buildable, or maybe like other factors. And so, making sure we have enough space in Tumwater meant that we increased the density rather than increasing the land or changing or rezoning pieces of land,
Right.
And changing their zoning designation.
Right.
So that was our answer and solution to that through the land use element discussion.
Presumably that still holds.
Oh, yes,
It's meant to hold for at least 20 years or so. Is that right?
it's meant to be sufficient over the next 20 years. Because those are all the 20-year projected housing unit requirement or
Right.
targets.
And so the economic development plan has a similar horizon, right? So,
Oh, same.
yeah.
Yep.
So it's gonna, we're gonna presumably still have space. We just have to sort out the uses, and we should already know where some of those critical area type things are. Yeah, those are pretty well mapped and understood. They don't just spring into being nowadays.
No, that's true, but the laws change.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we have a pretty solid understanding of what we've got, it seems to me.
Well, and
that kind of surprise.
And furthermore, the buildable lands analysis does include an analysis of our commercial lands and commercial and industrial lands as a group.
Okay.
Green business to me is a business that does not pollute the land, is more net neutral on energy. So a business that might be putting solar, putting different things up, but also not dumping sewage or not pulling so much water from the land.
Not a dry clean.
Yes, exactly. So
Not a
really,
data center.
business for me could be millions of different things, but yeah, I mean, water,
Yeah.
it's the water is what we're known for.
Yeah.
And is one of the reasons that we need to make sure that that is a finite resource that we do have. And we don't, just give it away. So when we're looking and we're talking about different trade sectors and different, light manufacturing and everything like that, we're not just going with, places that are going to take everything from our land and leave us with nothing. So that's one thing that I think of when I think of green business. I think of a million different things, just like everybody else, because green is trendy and has been for many years. But LEED Gold, LEED Silver, LEED Platinum, like those are all different things that businesses can have, but those are big businesses usually. So it can be a whole bunch of things, and I think that's why you kind of framed it up as a question.
Others? Commissioner Kotek?
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
All right. Let's keep going.
Hey, goal 4, target recruitment efforts to support existing businesses and supply chain gaps. And then there's a little bit extra, I think, that is speaking to the exact thing that you're talking about here. But I want to just give you a peek behind the curtain first around how the recruitment process typically actually occurs. So obviously, any business can hire a broker and they can build where they want to build, right? So I'm not talking about the kind of business that just identifies a site and decides they want to go to it. I'm talking about a targeted recruitment effort that engages with staff time and our economic development partners. So a common way that this might happen is that a national business might hire a site consultant. That site consultant will contact the State Department of Commerce. Department of Commerce will then send that lead to our economic development partners, and they will offer us an opportunity to put a package together to compete for that business to move here to the city of Tumwater. So that's what I'm talking about when I say recruitment effort, actual staff time. So what this goal does is it moves the recruitment effort towards a more defined profile. And it defines that by saying, okay, we have an existing business here. An extra valuable recruitment effort would be a business that fills a supply chain gap of an existing business that already locates here. So a business that exists here now might be importing an input from some other community somewhere far away. But if we get a recruitment case where we've identified, oh, hey, actually the widgets that they make are the perfect widget input for a business that we already have here, then all of a sudden we've captured an element of the supply chain that's more revenue for the city of Tumwater that helps strengthen our existing business. So it's defining it in terms of a recruitment effort that supports the businesses and supports the supply chain that we need to build in here. It's also sometimes called import replacement. And then speaking to what you were saying earlier, if we're going to go after a recruitment effort, should we be thinking about how we economize our scarce ecological input? Should we be thinking about our scarce land that was mentioned? Should we be thinking about a scarcity of water or infrastructure, carbon capacity? These are things that through our economic development partners at the Thurston EDC that we actually can quantify. We can get to metrics like for every gallon of water, how many jobs did we create? Now, candidly, a lot of times recruitment cases come to me and then it's 1 million gallons of water are needed. It will first come, first serve, but is that the kind of case that you would want staff to spend staff time to pursue, right? And how do we weigh that? So that's the nature of the question here. So are these kinds of recruitment criteria clear? Is it defensible to even put criteria on to begin with? How strict should the city be in actually valuing these things? And do ecological inputs, these measurements make sense? Water, land, carbon. Is there anything missing from that that we should use as a screen? Again, remembering that not just businesses that want to come here, but staff actually dedicating time to putting together a competitive package. That's the question that I have.
I think the other thing that we're missing, though we don't control it, is energy.
I'm wondering about a potential quality of life for the citizens here, kind of a measure. I don't know exactly what that would be. I really like these, and I like what Commissioner Ransley has suggested about energy, but turning that.
Quality of life, are you talking about like economically,
Could be,
environmentally?
it could be that, it could be the environment. It's like, are people staying here because it's now, it's even more desirable? Are they coming here because it's desirable? Is there good opportunity here for living, working, school, whatever you people need? In other words, that the city is taking in more revenue, that's one measure. But how do we translate that into what does that mean for an individual person? Right? The city might be getting rich, and hopefully they're not buying furniture. You know? But it's going to something like a pool or a park or better bus service or something. You know what I mean? So I think that you're on the right track. I think those are fabulous. Can we translate it into what that means to a person living?
I think of, like, with the national businesses, a lot of them, if they do it, are very outspoken about their community work and, like, how they invest in their communities that they're located in. So that also might be something. I don't know exactly what that measurement or what that even necessarily looks like, but kind of along that lines of, like, what is the community benefit of it as well?
Yeah, maybe that's a better way to say it, community benefit.
Well, and one of the things that you said earlier is the transportation aspect. If we were to plop something in the brewery area that needed 30 semi-trucks leaving from it daily, that would disrupt everything. And I don't want roundabout central like we have just north of us.
Oh, come on.
There, it's just trucks everywhere. I mean, that's a disruptor to the community. Having it down south, that's a little bit different, having it placed in certain areas. But when we look at the dead center of Tumwater, sorry, that's hard to pinpoint the center of Tumwater. Sorry, I don't want to bring up that comment. But we don't want trucks going through our arteries and being in the center. So that's one thing that I would like to look at is low value land consuming uses. I want to make sure whatever we put in the center or perceived center is something that's high impact, high dollar, really something that we'll benefit from. And I don't want to put a business in that's going to utilize all of our water or all of our resource, and we're not going to get the biggest benefit out of it, which to me is the community aspect, not just the monetary aspect.
I think the monetary aspect also plays a big role. And yes, they'll pay impact fees, but impact fees don't necessarily cover all of the transportation needs and the infrastructure needs. So also potentially, like, what actual partnership are they willing to put in for infrastructure improvements? I think the brewery district is a great example. If there are all of those roads around it that need massive improvements, are the businesses that are going to move in there going to be able to assist in that? Not all of them are, because we want all sorts of businesses in there, I believe. But like, if there's big businesses moving into that area, what are they willing to also assist with?
Plum Street in Olympia is built for semi-trucks because that's where the log trucks go up and down.
Right.
And they just redid a portion of it. But yeah, I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
It's very important.
So, Jean, this one is for, you know, like you say, kind of filling in the gaps of the supply chain for existing businesses and recruiting for those. Kind of two aspects. One is, I'm presuming there's some stuff about altogether new stuff, new business recruitment too, right? Okay, and which probably would have some of the same sorts of objectives and criteria that we're talking about here. The other is, are these pretty random? Do we just wait around for Commerce to pick something down the thing here? or is there a more, I don't know what, a proactive way to go about that?
Sure. So the challenge inside of a resource-limited department is always, where do you balance focus, right? So I think in this particular case, we rely on our partners that are out there doing that work. So the Economic Development Council, for example, they often contract with site selector consultants, right? And so it's not just the Department of Commerce, and it's not just the Economic Development Council. It's about creating an ecosystem of partners that can help resource-constrained municipalities like us accomplish a lot of kindness.
Okay. So we're kind of effectively partnering with them, and they help lobby for us out there in the world. Okay.
If only we had an economic expert in the room that could help us. Sorry. We can only wish.
Okie doke. Others on this question? I want to close this off. This one is probably a tricky one.
I'm wondering if it,
the top of the T1, first call. Starlight Lane Southwest. Cross Street is between Starlight Lane Southwest and then.
is it appropriate to take the time to think about the criteria for what you started out with was the limited industrial, light industrial, to really articulate that and to know that there are certain things we're just not even going to look at. Is that what you're asking for? Because it feels like that would be really, really helpful to be laid out. Like, how much power can be willing to have a business take? Because where I live, power goes out way too often. We are dealing with PSC. We have no control over PSC. Water, although we feel like we live in an area with a lot of water, I don't think we should make those assumptions. And so I think the use of water is another really important criteria to say we're not willing to consider a business that wants to draw X amount out.
Right.
And just kind of go through that stuff and have it as part of, not, it's just easy. You can eliminate certain possibilities that way.
That's exactly the intention. I mean, to reframe it in another way, how many gallons of water is a job worth?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a broader conversation that we should think about having. It shouldn't be had in a vacuum, right? It needs to be able to understand it. It should be one.
Yeah. Tough conversations.
Others? Commissioner Kotek, did you have anything on number 4, on goal 4?
I do not.
Okay, everybody's favorite one. Goal number 5, restore the brewery complex highest available use. We use the language at brewery complex really to indicate all of the abandoned brewery properties, not so the warehouse and the whole thing. Complex, again, it's a complex site, right? So it works on 2 levels. Okay, so we brought this goal out as a standalone action item because in the previous plan, it was mentioned in several different other elements, but we thought that it deserved to be brought front and center because it is one of the city's main economic development priorities. And again, we want to communicate to the public in a way that demonstrates that it's an economic development priority. So That's really the reason why it's its own standalone goal now. Okay, so what the goal does, it treats the abandoned brewery area as a catalytic redevelopment strategy. City invests where they can. They take state funding, federal funding, they implement it where they can. They use local planning processes like the Planned Action EIS to help mitigate the uncertainty, hopefully drive investment there. And inside this goal, it really connects all of these strategies together and produces them in a way that can be communicated to a developer or a member of the public or a surrounding business so they can get their heads wrapped around what's going on in this district. What is the city's actual plan here? What strategies are they putting in place? Highest available use. So is that the right framing? Highest available use. Is the warehouse's property, rail served industrial, worth preserving? Is that a key focus when we think of multimodal operating opportunities? And then start thinking about, like you mentioned earlier, right? What level of public investment is appropriate? To actually generate return. Put a lot of money in the area, right? And that doesn't guarantee that we get a return on investment that pays back in a reasonable amount of time. But there's other benefits, right? There's some core values, there's some community pride benefits to reactivating that space that may be worth any cost, right? So I'm curious how you think about that, how you would frame those things. Highest available use, the rail really that big of a deal, and how should we think about the public investment piece? Is it just, hey, if the return on investment is higher, then do it. If not, don't. Or are there some other things that we need to think about?
I think framing it as highest available use gives it this frame of like, we're shooting for the stars regardless of what impact it has. And I don't necessarily love that. I almost feel like it should also have like, this is the simplest way of framing it, as like the most community benefit, but that also has like such a broad, because it doesn't need to be a park, like that's not what the park does, but like what is going to be the most beneficial overall, like placemaking, economic development, growth, like all of these things. So some sort of like framing it in a beneficial way rather than just for the stars and hitting that. The public investment I struggle with because it's all privately owned, with a lot of money to put into a private ownership. I almost wonder if there should be a conversation around development agreements, sort of if the private owners don't meet a certain standard, then basically we ask for whatever tangible amount we ask for back. Kind of those modes of we're investing state, federal, local dollars, and it's still going to be an eyesore at the end of it. The community's going to be even more pissed. Mm-hmm. Like that is, as we get more grants and we say we are finding solutions, if it's an eyesore in 5 years, 10 years, everyone's going to say, yeah, it closed 25 years ago, and they pretended to fix it. Or they found money and didn't solve the problem. So I struggle with the public investment when it's privately owned, because there's such an opportunity for the public to feel miffed at the end of it.
But, you know, one advantage of putting this in its separate goal is that you can then decide what priority you want to put on it. Mm-hmm. So if you've got an overall plan that you're going to carry out, by focusing this in its own goal, maybe the highest productive use is to leave it alone. and go solve the other issues that are out there for economic development. So I heartily support, focusing on it as a singular, goal, in the legislature. The way that, the council, again, you're talking about what are the feelings of the council, that's what it finally boils down to, is, what direction we're gonna go, or the people that are elected, and, sit across the street there.
I do agree that it's gonna, that highest available is, I don't know, it's not the best language potentially, because it's just a multifaceted kind of a question, like we've been discussing for the other things. I do think it's gonna be worthwhile to preserve the rail, if at all possible. I don't know how that works exactly. You'd think I would know, but I don't. So, but if that rail line is actually owned as part of the property in private ownership, or if it's got some sort of easement through there that's public, or some other, the rail entity owns that or whatever, but you know, that is its own little conundrum there, it seems like, but it seems like that would be worth at least keeping as a priority for as long as possible within this one. Because you're not going to get that back. If you take it away, it is not coming back. Okay. So, and and
To be clear,
yeah.
the railroad isn't going away. I
yeah,
think the focus is on, can we think of a better business use for it? Can we,
yeah,
the barrier right now,
right.
is there an opportunity that we're not thinking about? So that if, let's
Yeah.
say the valley floor is a mixed use
Yeah.
scenario,
Mm-hmm.
at least that it has utility and that is
Right.
benefiting some business or industry in Tumwater.
Right.
But
Right.
to be clear, that is owned by the railroad, there is a full easement and
Yeah.
the East Street conundrum,
Yep.
that is,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, public investment, is the city able to purchase all of it and then utilize it in the way that it needs to? Because the way I look at it and the way I understand it, everything needs to be torn down. It's shells, it all needs to be demolished and then rebuilt to whatever it is, which, in my mind is apartments, is shopping, is restaurant. I mean, all of those things that make it this gorgeous, beautiful, iconic part of our city. And then down the street on Cleveland, you have the additional businesses and truly have a Tumwater downtown. That's my vision for the 20, 30, 40-year plan. How do we get there? I don't think we can without having the city say, okay, this is now ours, and now we're going to piecemeal this together and build this out. Because if you trust a private person to come in and do that, it's not going to happen. It's either going to be all apartments, all luxury, whatever's, all of that. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with, I think it's Westwater, that used to be the hotel. I'm curious to see how that shapes up and what that looks like. But the way I look at question number 3 is the city in the realm of looking at saying, this is now ours, we're going to figure out how to make this the best it can.
I don't necessarily agree that the city has to take ownership of it, and frankly, that'll never happen.
Yeah.
The city doesn't have nearly enough money to do that. But I think a great case study is the agricultural park in Tenino, which is owned by the city of Tenino, but is a partnership between private, public, and nonprofit partners, and is a massive culmination of many pots of money. And I think kind of back to like the development agreement, like we're putting money into the EIS. We potentially could do brownfield cleanup dollars. Those are only dollars that can be collected by governments. So there is a large benefit to whoever owns it. So entering into some sort of development agreement, which isn't unheard of for partnerships, to then have an outlook of, okay, this is what we're kind of wanting. And if you agree to this, we're going to help you through ordinances. We're going to help you through zoning. We're going to help you with funds, but that also means that now together we're gonna be a community asset.
Yeah, the main reason I was bringing it up is just to see if, throwing this end of the spectrum out. Here you go, here's this end, and then there's the end of doing nothing, and, framing it that way.
No, if the city of Tumwater is looking at, I know the Portland South waterfront, and then, what's the city south of Lake Oswego? There's another waterfront that's doing Oregon City.
Yeah.
The waterfront.
just
And
there.
So they're using the, you know, what level and type of, like, those were brownfields, industrial World War II solution, and then city of Portland
They
invested
purchased
like
them.
$3 million in a tram, and everybody was critical of that, but that's resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars of high-rise apartment buildings, and then Oregon City's a smaller city, a smaller example of also looking at the same.
They have an elevator, they've all,
Yeah,
you're just there on a bus.
and it was what you described, apartments and restaurants and all that kind of
Yes.
use, so we're looking at that to see what level and type of investment. They don't own, the city doesn't own those properties, they couldn't afford to have done the cleanup, it's gonna be multiple.
Exactly.
Where the city leverage is infrastructure investment to generate that.
Well, and that's the ROI, that's the investment, the ROI that I see is, you have this eyesore, and many cities have had eyesores because they've had these industrial complexes that have been dilapidated over years. And what do? They turn it into these beautiful, shining pillars of the community. And it's like, I think, to your point, is there a level of investment? I think there might be, but how do we make sure that it's the right level and that we are actually doing what people of the city want, which I think almost everyone in the city wants something there that they can utilize, that they don't have to see, and that they don't have to worry about, I mean, it burning down, or so, I mean, so many concerns.
Vancouver waterfront.
Yes, the Vancouver waterfront is beautiful.
Those are all 20, 30-year planning.
Right. Well, Tacoma did along Commencement Bay. That was all industrial.
Yeah.
What, Point Defiance, or Point Weston, thank you.
Well, and we may not have a waterfront, but the river and
It is
the
waterfront.
waterfalls is right there.
Yeah.
Well, and you have the bay and everything, so like, I think it's perfect.
And the beginning of that type of effort is a planned action environmental impact statement.
Yes.
Right, so that the city can help. Our role right now is to answer the question, what's wrong with it? What can you actually expect? And governments are the only folks that can go to EPA and get cleanup grants.
Yeah.
Any developer, any business, they can't get those cleanup grants. And so that's our best effort right now. That is our vision, and our focus is to answer the question, provide some certainty, and then the market can do what the market does.
So, how would that work if the present owner would have to sell to an owner who desires the city to get a grant to clean things up, right?
So we're moving forward, whether the current owner, a new owner, we're doing the planned action EIS, we don't need the permission
Okay,
or consent of current,
okay,
but we're doing a lot of things at once to cover our,
sure.
there's a
But that's
bunch.
just to get the money and kind of stack the deck, if you will, but you can't actually go take action and start cleaning up on somebody else's property, can you? Or, because, I mean, you know, that would be trespass, or
I think technically,
unless you condemn it,
coming from the county,
yeah?
there are a lot of compliance efforts that you can legally require. You can't ever force unless you condemn, but then condemning, there's very, very, very strict guidelines, and frankly, this city doesn't want to condemn it. 'cause
Yeah,
that's-
yeah.
More headaches.
Yeah,
And I
so,
can say that in our conversations with the owner,
right,
there isn't resistance to the idea of getting certainty or
Okay.
doing cleanup.
okay, well, that's a good thing.
And we're also doing a lot of parallel processes where we have a group that is being run through Thurston EDC of stakeholders and folks from the community to try to envision what can be done.
Yeah, okay. That's real good. I had previously, I guess, understood that the current owner was not interested in doing much at all. So, okay, that's good.
It might appear that way.
Testify to that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it looks like, I can't even imagine mindset there, but okay, yeah.
good one, thank you.
Yeah. Carry on.
Goal number 6, leverage Olympia Regional Airport to advance Tumwater's economic development priorities. I heard some chatter earlier, before we started the meeting. And yes, so our airport is an underutilized economic development asset. There's no doubt about that. So what this goal does is it creates a standalone goal. The airport is mentioned in subsections of the previous plan, but this highlights the airport as a true economic development strategic asset that is available to us. And it frames it as a job creator, a potentially a logistics hub, an advanced aviation asset. It thinks about the partnership that the city and the port need to make sure that they have to coordinate on land use and improvement efforts inside the industrial land that's there that could take advantage of an airport of that size. Think training facilities, or you mentioned how do we support the aerospace sector up north? So we have an airport here where you could potentially do small test flights, and that could make sense, right? And then I threw in the idea of these electric aircraft, the eVTOLs, right? So that stands for electric vertical takeoff and landing devices, right? And really, I don't know if this has legs, but yeah. Thank you. I'm going to tell everyone that. But we have a small regional airport, and the idea that there could be small passenger devices that could connect us regionally to other major metropolitan areas. I mean, these things are, they have pilots at first, but they're ultimately meant to be autonomous devices that can connect different areas. So you can imagine our airport here being a significant transit hub. Instead of taking I-5 North, you could take an air taxi to get to Seattle, Portland, or Spokane. That's a potentially achievable outcome. The U.S. Department of Transportation is writing those guidelines right now for communities to potentially create a kind of site readiness plan. So there's infrastructure requirements that are around that. You got to charge these things, right? So that means that we need to make sure that we have a battery energy storage permitting plan to be able to create these kinds of things. And then, of course, we need to make sure that the port is bought into that vision, too. So it's really about framing this place as a strategic asset, whether it's going to be vertical takeoff or not, right? But exploring new kinds of ideas to try to be at the frontier of what's possible, to leverage the airport to do, but also at the same time think about, I agree, we've got a lot of avionics and aerospace companies in this state, and we can take advantage of that too using that asset. Oh, so.
Can I caveat you, Jane?
Please.
To be clear, we're not talking about expanding the airport. We're not talking about the regional controversy about the airport. We're talking about our #1 landowner in Tumwater. And a lot of times when we're trying to help businesses look for properties, leases, we work with the Port of Olympia and our airport folks. So this is not feeding into a regional plan. This is just us being forward thinking about economic development in Tumwater. Thank you, Jean.
Cool. Thank you for that clarification. That's very important.
Very important.
Ask a clarifying question.
Yeah.
When the port wants to do development on port land, do they have to go through the city? I just wasn't sure if they were like a separate entity that goes through the state or the.
No, they're a landowner. Yep.
Kind of on that front, I guess I might ask, have you talked with the port staff or electeds about this notion, and are they amenable or not? I mean, you know, I don't know where the relationship between the city of Tumwater and the Port of Olympia is right now. It's maybe been not so great in the past, but, you know, is it viable to start with? Are they willing to entertain a notion like this?
A lot of opinions. I would say that the people that I have spoken to at the staff level want to make sure that this is used as an economic development asset of some kind, right?
Right.
And then certain electeds that I've spoken to, some are quite interested in that concept. And then, you know, I think that there's some conversation that needs to be had, you know, with some others. So I certainly would not sit here and say that the board is 100% bought into this vision, right? What I would say is that there's an opportunity to have that conversation. Yeah. And do we want to be a thought leader in that conversation?
Thank you. So kind of follow on that is, what would sweeten the deal? How much money can they make?
Which one would we make?
The port.
The port. Oh, right. So yeah, that's a good question. You know, certainly, I think we would look to the Economic Development Council to do impact analysis on any kind of project.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this gets back to how we calculate return on investments. There's a mechanism to do that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not napkin math. We can use best standards practice to make those kinds of determinations.
Yeah.
The port themselves, they do an economic benefit study, I think every 5 years, where they really do qualify that kind of work.
Yeah.
But certainly any type of use that we might come up with, these are really great paying jobs, right?
Right.
So that's a quantifiable thing, and that's certainly something that we could articulate.
Because I would think, I mean, the port is sort of in the business of making money, right? Aren't they? I mean, sorry, that's too simple.
That is their biggest goal.
Right, okay. And so,
The airport is on a little bit standing and, the water port.
yes, yes.
The goals and missions of the airport are separately
Mm,
established, and part of an operating plan.
right,
If they were independently, looking forward to doing things to get them into that frame of mind, they can work separately from them.
so I guess my point is that they stand to benefit from having some forward thinking, even if City of Tumwater shoves them into it, right? So, but they stand to benefit, or they could be brought to see that they could benefit in some way, you know? So, I mean, I think that might be something to keep in your hip pocket about that, because otherwise it's a little tough to have that if you're not going to have a willing partner on our biggest landowner.
I do think.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
From a staff perspective, we
Mhm.
want to make sure that we're bringing these, what did you say, thought leader? These thought leader ideas to you as an advisory board, as a planning commission, before we start reaching out to other organizations in a meaningful
Sure.
way.
Sure.
You know, we, as staff, we connect
Yeah.
quite frequently, and we have lots of big brain ideas.
Yeah.
And we just, it's good to first to check that with you to make sure that, does that sound like
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
connects with you, and that historically, you know, when we look at the context of history, is that going to be an issue? But we all sort of
Sure.
froze up when we heard airport.
Yeah.
There's a lot of controversy there, right?
There really is, and being on the flight path, I mean, you know, I'm really betwixt, but that's a personal issue for me. And, you know, the broader picture, I'm very much in support. I think this is a really great kind of a goal. I'm just wanting us to understand, you know, what are some of the challenges ahead with, which are maybe not like concrete, solvable mathematically, but are relationship things, which are way harder.
It's hard because people change.
Yes, there's that, you know. Okay, so I divulged a little bit about what I think about the port right now, but okay. So.
Well, and I think the
Don't
big,
put that in the minutes.
big difference between conventional airports and the way things are going with the eVTOLs, you don't have those long takeoff and landing pathways with the noise
Right.
reduction, with all the different pieces. You have silent aircraft taking off, which are, I mean, a helicopter makes tremendous amount of noise. These make very little. It's more like a drone. It's kind of a whine. But having Boeing up north building airplanes, and they own a company that is making autonomous eVTOLs right now.
Mhm.
And that's not here in Washington State. I think that's Wichita, where they're being built. But if they're needing testing, if they're needing different paces, we are the perfect distance away
Mhm.
for them to use that. Also, anybody that is living down here that has to travel on I-5, like I used to have to go up to Everett, it was 2.5 hours, 3 hours. It was
Oh, yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
I would love to have a little air taxi I could hop into and take 20-minute, 30-minute ride and drop me off at my place of business, or close enough that I can hop into an Uber and then take that Uber to where I need to go. I do feel that's the future, is autonomous air taxis tied with autonomous vehicles that will just take you from point A to point Z. I think that is a missed piece if we do not try to push that, especially for these with the charging, with the landing pads, but not just focusing on the airport. I think we also look at what other
Mhm.
regions and zones are these going to be allowed. I mean, you go to New York City, you go to places with skyscrapers, and they have helicopter pads on the top of the building. Where else would we benefit from having these types of pads for park and ride situations or something like that? Those are just things that I think about, and I've talked about with people at the port and with people in the community, with our visitor bureau, with multiple entities, because I believe this is a path forward.
Others? Commissioner Kotek? Do we still have Commissioner Kotek? No.
Awesome.
Okay, we still have quorum though, so we're still good. All right.
Right, if I could just quickly
Yes.
add, I think there's a large, in my opinion, a large element of like political appetite, but also like community appetite. Because like the community is not pro growth at the airport. So like this, if that got to like mainstream tomorrow, the city would be getting a million phone calls. Like people would hate this.
Mhm.
So like the framing of it has to be critical. And I almost am more supportive of us being more broad in this goal of like, let's start to leverage our relationship with the Port of Olympia first. Look at what the appetite is, city council, what it is community, what it is Port of Olympia, because it's also, as much as it should and shouldn't be, depending on the conversation, like it's also a Thurston County as a whole conversation.
Yeah.
Because so many people are opinionated on what happens at the Olympia Airport.
Right.
So it's not even what does the city of Tumwater want, it's what do Thurston County as 300,000 people want. And we saw from the regional airport conversation, they don't want anything. Like even if it benefits them, they don't want it.
Yeah. Okay, tough one. All right.
Okay, we've touched on this a little bit, but again, this was something that was kind of buried inside of different processes. Kelly had mentioned this earlier. Goal number 7, conduct business outreach to better connect local economic actors and City Hall. This is a coordinated program to make sure that we have a framework for doing outreach and creating an outreach program instead of just engagement actions with various. It's a framework for understanding how we get information from the business community, from our partners who are better connected to the business community than we are, and actually turning that into something actionable that we can bring back to meetings like this, the council, so that there is a connection between decision makers and the economy. But there's an ask for us too, right? We want to make sure that we're communicating back. We want to be creating dashboards, data dashboards, economic language and development opportunities, and plain language resources. And some partner accountability, right? And how we do that kind of outreach, Should there be a minimum number of businesses spoken to, for example? We think about reporting structures. Really, it's at its core, moving away from this idea that we will piecemeal have engagement, it suits whatever initiative we have, to know this is a fundamental programmatic effort that's built into the blood of how the economic. That's really the idea. So the questions that I'd like to get some feedback on are, is it appropriate for us to leverage our partners in this way? Is it important that the chamber be the front line for this kind of work? And the truth is they tend to have the better relationships and the better trust, right? So it gives us an opportunity to leverage that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only way to do it. So are they positioned correctly? And then the second question is, well, once we get this outreach back, you know, what types of information should we actually regularly report back to the Planning Commission, back to City Council? What's of value for us to collect?
Can I ask a very simple question? Does every business in the city of Tumwater have to file for a business license?
I believe so. Yeah, there's a state and then there's also a city business license. So it's double.
I'm just thinking, like, it's hard to survey people out in the wild, like, people just don't do it, but if you have to file for your business license and renew it, like, what if we're using that as an opportunity to just collect a moment of data? If you have storefronts, how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10? If you own office rentals, how many of them are vacant? Where are they vacant? Like, we can start to use them as a resource to help themselves. Like, that's a long journey of a goal, but like, vacant space is dollars lost. So if we just simply have a resource that then we give to the EDC when they have these incubators where smaller companies want to grow, but they don't know where to grow, we have that.
I'm not totally sure what kind of information to report back on. Those are really good ones that Mr. Rounsley has come up with. I'm sure there may be others, but maybe there's some little feature that maybe I don't know, the timing wise, maybe quarterly or so, you could come to the commission and tell us what you've been hearing about whatever seems like a hot topic or something of interest. Just hearing from you at all has been really great. I mean, you know, we missed having an economic development person for a long time, so maybe we're just extra hungry, or I am, to hear about how things are going. So, you know, tell us something, you know, rather than nothing, I guess. Yeah, Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
I don't know if it's in this goal or whether it's somewhere else. Maybe you could answer the question for me, but does this also include education of the electorate of the city of Tumwater? We talk about the fact that the airport itself is a negative in the minds of many people. Those things can be changed, and they really depend. In many cases, are dependent upon what are the pronounced opinions of council members and the city itself. So, is education, and I use the term broadly, an objective here in order to influence public opinion, so that when it comes time to put in your vertical transportation out of the airport, people want it.
Yeah, I think that's where we bake in outreach in every element. So in whatever we are doing, we are baking in some public outreach and outreach to important folks, stakeholders, so that, that's really what we do with all of our projects, to make sure there's something on social media, there's something on the website, there's something in an update or publication. We try to come to meetings of different advisory boards and share information.
The city has an excellent website, you can get almost any piece of information that you want off of it, but you can't lead the horse to water.
Right.
You can't get people to go to your website. And it's not just City of Tumwater website, it's pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
People just, don't go to, drink the water.
And I think that's where the city's increased social media presence in the last few months. Mayor Dahlhoff's expectation setting on staff communication and outreach has really changed and has increased. And my idea for the summer is we wear shirts that say what's going on with the brewery and people will talk to us. And then we to the website.
Yeah.
So one thing, I don't like, regular tag up. So like with my team, we have a weekly tag up, but we skip 3 out of 4 for the month. I like when there's something to report, when there's something interesting, when you've gathered enough data, that's when to come to us and talk. Don't just stop in because it's the 4th month of the year and it's our time to come talk. That's just what I would say to that.
But it sounds like you're gonna be finding out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so that means come often. Open door policy.
Yeah.
Given that we haven't heard from Economic Development Department for a long time,
Yeah.
We're eager.
Yeah. There's a lot of catch up. Yeah.
I guess if I like the type of information, as you're doing these exit interviews, if it's like, oh, well, it's too hard to do this redevelopment, or this sign couldn't be put up, or like, those are also things that we should be hearing, that council should be hearing. If we're making it harder for people to operate a business and their technical changes, like, obviously if they want to build something massive and we don't want that, like, that's different. But like, if they're trying to do small things and it's impossible, or the fee's $1 million, like, I know impact fees are a barrier to success. We want to hear that.
Commissioner, were you in our office today? You just named a whole bunch of things that we were talking about with the business outreach information that we got back.
Channeling.
Work in government a couple of days, you'll hear it all.
Can't put your in front of some.
Don't block pedestrian passage. Okay,
Number 8, we're getting through it.
all right.
Strengthen Tumwater's community and district vibrancy and advance the community as a regional destination through placemaking. Okay, this was another one of those goals that if you look in sub-area plans and by district chatter inside of the previous plan, you can see this idea forming. But again, it's one of those that's big enough to stand on its own. We wanted to make sure that it stood on its own. Really what this is about, it's about the way you think about a district before you go there. What's the district's reputation? When you think about Times Square, something comes into your mind about Times Square. Saying that Tumwater needs a Times Square, but we should have something in people's mind when they think about Tumwater. As we've mentioned before, perception is one of the largest drivers of tourism. So this is how we get to modifying perception. Something that combines community-oriented development, district health, destination, emphasizes the things that we have. We have incredible access to nature. It was mentioned, we have the waterfront. And people come from all over to see it. Wayfinding, our culture, our heritage. We've got an unbelievable history here in the city of Tumwater, and it's underutilized. It's a mechanism for drawing visitors to our community. I want to develop a kind of consistent framework around how we message our community and our placemaking strategy. This speaks a lot to the conference that I just came back from, and that's not why I put it in here. It wasn't really excited about the conference, and I am, but that's not it. It's big enough. It's big enough to really think about in a comprehensive way. Now, the challenge I think that we're going to have as a resource-constrained organization is that Tumwater is going to want to develop its own regional placemaking identity, but that strategy is going to exist inside of a larger county-oriented placemaking identity with the Visitor and Convention Bureau, right? So the question that I have is, how do we think about balancing creating regional identity versus creating local identity? Certainly, there are some districts where that's really clear, the Brewery District, a lot of history. Thinking about the heritage that we have with George, there's some low-hanging, no doubt. But how do we balance that as a resource-constrained organization? Regionally, hyper-locally, how do you think?
I'm even going to talk because I could go on for hours. George and Isabella Bush, I think, are some very underutilized people. And we focus on the brewery, focus on the water, but really, they were the founders of Washington State. They were the ones that brought out all of us here. I think we forget about that in Tumwater, and our residents don't remember that, especially with us replacing the logo. We've gotten away from what was a very interesting, great history, which some people can take a negative light on, but they were the shining light there. Also, I think partnering with the BCB is one of the greatest things we can do, because they are thinking regionally, and they are trying to help identify individual locations while thinking of Thurston County as a whole. I think all that is what I'll say.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
I think strengthen is your critical word up there. I'll give you an example. American Cruise Lines has been operating on the Snake and Columbia Rivers for 12 years. And they recently added 2 new ships on, and they started doing tours of Puget Sound. And in their initial offering, they came to the city of Olympia looking to have their cruise include Columbia and that route. Their cruise ends in because they just got no response out of Olympia, no encouragement, nothing, and it wasn't just the city of Olympia, obviously, port.
They shut them down.
The port was a critical piece of that. But nobody did what you talked about doing earlier of developing a proposal. But they came to Olympia. They didn't go to Commerce. They came to Olympia and said, hey, this is a logical place to end this cruise. Is in Olympia. So we're not talking about just a stop off. We're talking about people spending a night in a hotel before they go on the cruise.
Right.
And they just got a response. And so they've got 2 ships now running out of Tacoma.
I think that conversation's been opened back up. That conversation's been opened back up. But it was a missed opportunity that now we have to go crawling back.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great example of we can't control all of the external parties. So we can only plan and showcase as much as possible as Tumwater is open for business.
Yeah.
I think to kind of twist this question a little bit, I'm also curious how Tumwater is investing their LTAC dollars, the lodging tax dollars. What kind of strategy are we using in that? Or is it just any event that applies gets money? Like, what are we doing to bring in tourism in a beneficial light and put people back in a hotel in a actual productive manner?
Get out of our office. So
I work in someone's office.
we actually had a really nice call with BCB on Friday talking about what kind of data can you all help us achieve, because you have all these great and wonderful systems, recognizing that everyone has constrained capacity right now. What data can you give us that we can give to LTAC to tell the story of, first of all, these dollars are to put heads in beds. They are tourism dollars. So uses like the air show are completely appropriate. And more communities are seeing increasing numbers of applications for LTAC dollars, and they're used for local events that don't draw in tourists and don't draw in funds into the city. So on the nose.
And the challenge right now is more and more cities are getting people asking for LTAC dollars that don't understand that my little event that I'm putting on isn't really deserving of LTAC dollars because it's not heads and beds. So I will say, yes. And I will say one thing, I'm very proud of the city of Tumwater in the last year or so. I have my finger in a lot of pies in the community and regionally. And the more, I have not heard the name Tumwater more than the last 6 months to a year. So it's incredible to see the changes that are happening. I've been a resident since 2019. My family is the Bush family. So they've been here since the 1850s. I'm just amazed at how much Tumwater is in the conversation. 5 years ago, that was not a thing. Tumwater was not in the conversation. It was, oh, that city that's next to Olympia. So I think that is really telling no matter what. I mean, partnering with the BCB is the right thing. Partnering with the EDC, partnering with all these people is the right thing. But just opening ourselves up for the conversation, I think, is the best thing that we've ever done.
I don't think I'll say, just to curtail what was said earlier, I think there also has to be a level of education of the elected officials of some of these new changes that are happening, some of these new goals that are happening. I know I work for an elected official, and when they don't hear what's happening, then they think nothing's happening. So like, there also has to be a balance of like, here's all of our goals, here's how these are being implemented, here's all of the great things that are happening to everyone. Community, commissions, and the electeds in a kind of, here's all the great things that are happening.
Final goal. Develop an affordability strategy that secures equitable access to Tumwater's future growth. We want to grow in a way that means that the service worker that works in Tumwater lives in Tumwater. We set this out as its own goal because it is truly, affordability is truly important economic interest. If the people can't afford to live here, they will not work here, will not get recruitment opportunities here if the workers that you're trying to recruit businesses for can't afford to live here. Intersection between our climate strategy, getting individuals off of the road, decreasing commute times, is an important part of that. And there's a couple of different ways that you can go about this, right? You can create a wish list of public programs that if you had all of the money, you could implement in targeted ways. We're not that community size, right? So this goal focuses on supply side solutions, focuses on how can the city open up a pathway for people who build housing to build it here in a more cost-effective way. If we say that we have a value where we want people to thrive here, which levers can we pull here at the city to bring costs down and to make sure that our community doesn't turn into a Santa Barbara where very few people can afford to live. We don't want young people to move to other communities. We want them to be able to stay here and build a life. There's a handful of ways that we can do that. Like I said, city has a few tools, zoning, infrastructure, incentives, right? But there's not that many tools, so we have to be really strategic in how we do that. We have to be really thoughtful. So the first thing that I want to ask, and I didn't put this here, is that, I mean, this is a new kind of goal, right? This is a new kind of goal. It is something that we should really be thinking about as something of this level of importance to be concentrated as a high-level goal like this? Is affordability that important that we need to be thinking about it in this way? And if so, what kinds of indicators do we need to be tracking over time to make sure that we're on track, that we are an affordable community?
Tough one.
Well, I think there's a lot of data around wages and housing costs, and those are the two big drivers of what's affordable or not, and that data exists. You don't have to search too far for it. Somewhere in this document there was a strategy around livable wages and the debt, but then there are jobs that are not livable wages. So as you grow, as you bring in new businesses, childcare needs to respond to that. You've got young workers, young families. Childcare is not a livable wage. I don't think that's the responsibility of the city to make that. So, but it's just to know that and to understand that, and then do what you're talking about, and which we talked about housing a lot, is to provide those affordable places for people who are making 30% of the whatever that's called.
AMI.
Thank you. Yeah. But those are two clear ones that would be included in that the data is easily accessible. That's one of the things I want to think about, is not having you guys chasing data or inventing new data, to look at.
For the record, I just want to state AMI is area median income. I didn't want to leave it without a
Thank you.
saying the acronym.
I tend to think of affordability as this equation that includes not just housing, but also the cost of transportation. Cost of owning a car, gassing it up, keeping it maintained and insured, because you have to travel to wherever and use that car, and the cost of the housing. So it's going to have to be some combination of those kinds of things. It should be available. I think something like the Census Bureau, the American Community Survey, or something like that does have some information. And if we scare up some money, we can maybe get a special survey here, in future, so that we can track it through time. But I think those are some really key areas. The other part of this for me is to understand that, to understand some of our demographic and future trends in demographics here in Tumwater, is that we're not entirely a working community. There's a lot of retirees here who choose to retire either out of public service or, say, military, or for whatever reason. And so the jobs equation may not be the only thing. Maybe it's access to medical care, access to education, or other kinds of things. So, I think we need to paint a bigger picture than it's just the jobs. The jobs are really important. I'm not saying they're not, but a big chunk of our demographic is not at work. But still needs affordable housing, most likely. I mean, I guess there's some rich people here, but anyway.
So this question makes me think of a potential partner that maybe somewhere needs to be fit into this. The picture of this is intercity transit. It just is not adequate for the city of Tumwater. It does not serve the whole city of Tumwater.
Not adequate.
And some of our folks with the lower incomes live on the edges.
Well, to be clear, the boundary line for intercity transit is very cut and dragged because of past voter initiatives that cut South County out of it. So it would have to expand to some of those unserved areas, would have to be a whole new voter initiative, which would have to be a conversation of, here's what intercity transit's already doing, proving to be beneficial, here's how it would be beneficial. I definitely agree that intercity transit should be a conversation. And I think one of the indicators that we should be researching is how many of our citizens are using it And are they using it
I agree.
in a like, are they using it to go to work? Are they using it to go to the grocery store? Are they using it to go to the doctor's appointment? What is the age demographic? Like, how are we giving data to inner city transit, but also how are we getting data from inner city transit? Because I know I drive to work. I could take the bus, but it's not convenient. For it being a 7-minute drive, it's not a convenient bus ride.
The hour and a half you have to take.
Yeah, like, it's just not beneficial. So it's also like a conversation of how are we looking at where housing is going and working with inner city transit to serve those areas? Like, obviously, those are two separate boards, but like, they just went through a whole redesign of routes process.
Mm-hmm.
How is our elected representative who's so,
Mm-hmm.
but like, as a renter, to answer your first question, like, I think affordability is absolutely critical to discuss, but it's also like people over 30% AMI, because middle housing doesn't exist. Like, I can't buy a starter home. It doesn't exist because no one is moving out of their starter homes, and whoever is, that new house is $450,000.
Right.
And
I
that's,
can afford that.
and that's something we discussed
At length.
deeply. And that's what I want to bring up is the middle housing aspect and that stair stepper. How do you have that stair step to ownership? And I think that is one of the critical junctures that we keep missing out on is how do you go from being a renter to a home buyer to then the next piece? I mean, I went through that back in 2015 where I went from renting to buying a house, and I did that in an area where you could buy a house for $150,000. Here, you can't do that. You are completely correct.
Yeah.
So with the middle housing and with that stair step, how do we have smaller bite-sized homes that are sufficient, and you don't need a 3,000 square foot house? I think Terry brought it up before. I mean, 1,200 square foot houses, 1,300, 1,400 square foot houses, that's sufficient. And how do you have those where somebody can purchase that,
Those are still
live in it for, yeah, exactly. So what does that look like, and how do we encourage builders to come here and do that and help us out? Because Tumwater, I will say, when I moved here, was the expensive community. It was, I was told to go down to Chehalis or go to Lacey, but don't go to Tumwater because it's too expensive. And I decided to purchase Tumwater. But that was a whole other issue. So it's just like, where's that stair step? And how do we get people from renting to buying their starter home to then moving on to their next destination? Because the community is not sitting there, the younger generation is not staying in a house for 40 years. They're not staying in jobs for 40 years. It's stair-stepped. It's 2 years here, 4 years here, 6 years here. I see the same thing with houses. You start out here, then you move up, then you move over, then you move around a little bit. But how do we get that in our community so they're not going to all these other communities?
How are we incentivizing people to build even a condo style apartment or building rather than just a building, an apartment complex, or buying a house to then rent it out? Because that is a hill I will die on. Is we are allowing every eligible house to be bought and rented out before we're looking at everyone who actually needs to buy their first home.
Condominiums have a lot to do with the Washington State condominium law. The only thing that happens less is that we just don't have condos. Take a look at how many condos are bought and sold in Thurston County per month. It's smaller than the 5 that are on my hand. So we are not dense enough community yet to make condominiums profitable. So unless the law changes, and then of course that if the law changes, that means there's more risk involved in the buyer. Right now, the problem is that there's more risk involved in the builder. They don't get built in the first place.
One of the things that we have asked, I guess it's the planning department, right, is to start at some point providing information about all of the changes that were made in the housing, allowing ADUs and pretty big density on lots and all of that. We're really interested in knowing what the permit, how many permits are being sought to do that kind of building, to be able to create affordable housing, you know, to your concern.
That's a good indicator to track.
Yeah, it really is.
What's the cost per square foot in ADU compared to what
Yeah.
we pay for the houses?
$400, $500 square foot.
Or more.
Yeah.
There's no way that an ADU can be affordable compared
Yeah.
to what I think.
There
They're
are
not
state
using
laws to
granite
dictate it
and
now.
expensive things.
I'm sorry, can you go ahead?
There's state laws now to dictate it, but I'm also curious, like, what are turnaround times on permits for apartments,
Yeah.
for individual housing? Like, how are we meeting the state requirement, but also, like, how are we making the wait time shorter? Because the longer a property owner waits, the more expensive it gets.
So coming back to your goals, I just had this kind of it's not a comprehensive comment, but there was some language in here, there's lingo in here that I actually had to Google a couple times to figure out what it was you were talking about. And I'm an educated person, but I'm not in your business. So if this is meant to be a public document, I don't know how you feel about taking out terms like trader sector and placemaking and some of those. Like, I think I know what he means by placemaking, but that's not part of my vocabulary. Yeah, yeah, it was just an observation. Yeah.
Sitting in this room,
Planning
listening,
buzzwords.
listening to you all, I've been jotting down those and going, plain talk?
Yeah.
Plain talk?
Plain talk.
So this is an evolution for us, and so this is really the first time we've gotten to sit down with you with these specific goals. So we look forward to plain talking them more.
That's something we went over with the comprehensive plan is time blurs. I think for the last 2 years, we've been asking plain talk,
Right.
because it's great to have all of this stuff, but if nobody reads it, why'd you do it?
Yep, or uses it, yeah. So I'm mindful of the time, and we have 15 minutes to go before we have to take a vote whether to continue, but I think we're kind of closing in on things, right? If our conversation on the goals is pretty well wrapped up, we can probably wrap this up, right? Okay, I don't want to cut anybody off. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I want to just say thank you, and this is really an amazing first draft of there's a clear vision, and I love the fact that the two of you have a clear vision, and you're sharing that with us, and this exciting vision. You're welcome.
If I could-
Yes.
I think one of my biggest gripes with a comprehensive plan is it's just a big goals document, and often it just sits on a shelf. And there's nothing with teeth, there's nothing with action. So to have so many strategies, have so many goals, have so much vision, it's nice. It feels good to be working on something that actually could be implemented rather than just sit on a shelf.
Binder project? Those never happen in this community.
So Terry, with all of his experience, somehow we've been seated together since I started. You probably won't remember this, but we had a couple short meetings after the growth management thing was finally done. And he leans over to me and he says, just wait till we hear from the economic development.
Here we are. So what are your next steps? Do you want to fill us in on that?
So next steps, we need to do some community outreach on. So, we coordinated with the Economic Development Council to set up roundtables. The last time I was here, there was a suggestion to make sure that we're talking to our education partners as well. So that'll be a part of it. Think about the connections of workforce that we talked about. And then the Tumwater Chamber. So we want to make sure that we incorporate that feedback into our draft by mid-July. And then we'll go through another process. See that draft.
Very good. All right,
Great.
Super.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your being here, and we hope to see you again sooner rather than later.
It's a great leap forward.
It's a great
We
step
were-
forward. Gosh. Yeah,
It was a difficult process.
yeah,
just producing the previous development plan.
yeah,
Nobody was happy.
yeah. Yeah. So, big lift. All righty. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so, our next meeting date is gonna be May 26th, coming up in a couple of weeks. And I noticed that we have a couple of handouts over here on the side about the Department of Commerce's, short course on local planning. You might want to pick one of those up. Is there a particular date scheduled where people could attend one of those, or?
We just had one last week.
Okay, there you go.
I'm so sad I missed it.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to let you know I will not be at the next meeting.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Okay, very good. We may have to be reminded, but that's okay. Yeah. Okay, so, if you haven't done one of those, short courses, they're really great. So, they're out there.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. A public thank you to Sharon for, you said
Listening.
of course, for making it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
I benefited from it, understood the role of the commission much better,
Good.
and really the importance of it. So, and then the whole public meeting stuff, all of it.
All right.
It was good to know, it really was. So thank you so much for doing that.
Very
We had
good.
one presenter who presented on Zoom. He was the most dynamic one of the bunch. So it doesn't have to be live. It can be done on Zoom.
Yeah.
Just really fast talking.
Yeah. All right. I don't want to cut anybody off. Any other remarks? All right. Seeing as how we have concluded our business today, I think we will be adjourned. And it is 9:17.
Yay.
29-minute meeting.
I know.
And Brad wasn't here. I'm so upset Brad wasn't here for this, because he always threatens to keep it till 9:30.
I know, I
Always.
know.
And then the one time he skips out.
Yeah.
That was great.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, commissioners.
Yeah.
Come more often.
Bar really high, everybody's got to serve for 20 years.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you liked it.
Ticket to, big, stadium. Late in the evening, I got to, you sold out the whole stadium?
Oh, that's gonna be so much fun.
It was wild.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was Aslan that said that he had a really good time, getting to know you better. Yeah.
Did you?
Oh, no.